Well, jumping straight out into the battle, Sierra is going to be leading out with the Amoonguss and the Arcanine, so potentially preparing for some Trick Room shenanigans on Aaron's side. And with that classic combination of Togekiss and Bronzong, Aaron has the potential to start follow-meing away any moves on Sierra's side, allowing Bronzong to set up Trick Room, if that is the strategy that Aaron wants to go for.
Yeah, and you know, the Togekiss can threaten the Amoonguss, but it can also carry something like Safety Goggles with that redirection, the Follow Me there, which would allow a kind of a seamless setup of Trick Room if that's the route that Aaron wants to go down. The Amoonguss has to be careful of the Togekiss with those super effective air slashes or max airstreams, but we are going to just jump in, Lou, and we're going to see a Dynamax in this first turn.
It's going to be that Togekiss, you know, a Pokemon that when Dynamax was first introduced really was kind of a champion of this particular mechanic of the Pokemon video game, able to deal out huge chunks of damage, and particularly those max airstreams start boosting up the speed on Aaron's side of the field. Arcanine, however, just wants to reduce the damage output potentially from that Togekiss, going for that Snarl, reducing the special attack by one stage, and doing a decent amount of chip damage to that Bronzong as well. Togekiss is indeed going to go for that max airstream, trying to remove the pesky Amoonguss from the field, but it is rocking that Cobra Berry, meaning this first flying type attack move is going to be reaching damage. Also, to boot, the fact that it's at -1 special attack means that Amoonguss is going to be sitting pretty on the field at the moment, and it is safe to potentially go for a Spore as we turn into the latter parts of this turn here. Bronzong, however, not going for Trick Room, instead going to be going for another speed mechanic and going for that Bulldoze, going to be lowering the speed on Sierra's side of the field on Arcanine and the Amoonguss by one stage. So Aaron deciding to try and make sure the speed is extra speedy on his side, and the Spore comes out from the Amoonguss. It's going to go into that Bronzong, so Bronzong taking a nap.
Yeah, very disruptive turn here for Aaron, because Sierra's done all the right things to kind of slow down everything on Aaron's side of the field, with that Snarl reducing the special attack damage on that Togekiss, so, you know, not going to be able to pick up the knockout onto the Amoonguss, which is so important for her. And with the Cobra Berry on top of that, really just kind of making sure of that, allowing the Spore to come off and into the Bronzong, really nice, because that is Aaron's mode to setting up the potential Trick Room later on in this game. Amoonguss is now at risk of getting knocked out, and the one thing about the Snarl drops is, even though that special attack is dropping, Togekiss known to have that ability, Super Luck, and can get critical hits now and again. So if it does land a critical hit, it will negate any special attack drops and be able to easily pick up a knockout. So Sierra has to be careful if she wants to preserve that for later on in this game.
That is where Togekiss can be such a threat, and Amoonguss, identifying the threat level from those max airstreams, just goes for a little protect on this turn. Togekiss is, however, going to target right down into that slot with the max airstream, and it does a huge chunk of damage through the protect. Obviously, it is super effective. There's also no more Cobra Berry and a critical hit to boot as well. That poor Amoonguss still has to take a chunk of damage as Togekiss boosts up the speed on Aaron's side of the field. The Rotom that just switched in, able to catch a speed boost as well. However, you know, you get your speed boost, but then you also get a special attack drop, as Rotom switching onto the field would also have to take a Snarl.
Yeah, the Snarl there is just so beneficial for Suri. You know, she is just being able to slow this game down and really make it difficult for anything on Aaron's side to kind of build that momentum. We've mentioned the critical hits with the Togekiss, but you're not always guaranteed to land those. So if you don't land them, that's when you're getting punished for it. The Rotom as well coming in, and that special attack drop. It's a great switch from Aaron. It puts a lot of pressure onto the Arcanine, but with the Snarl support there, it's not going to be able to probably pick up a knockout onto the Arcanine, which you would normally go for with the Hydro Pump, this super effective attack there. But he's in a nice position where he can get rid of the Amoonguss and go for that Hydro Pump if he wants some damage onto that Arcanine now, as the Airstream does pick up the knockout onto that Amoonguss.
Yeah, Aaron here able to get another critical hit on this Togekiss, you know, really being able to kind of demonstrate why it is such a formidable Pokemon. But Aaron does have the luxury at the moment of really being able to kind of pivot around and make this turn exactly what he wants here. He picks up the KO against that Amoonguss, no longer has to worry about Spore, and allows the Rotom that really doesn't feel too threatened by the Arcanine at this point to go for that nasty plot, putting it at +1 special attack, meaning when it takes the Snarl that it just has from the Arcanine, it's now at neutral, so it's not going to have any of those kind of negative stats when it comes to its special attack, and that's something that Sierra's side of the field has to watch out for. Like you said, Hydro Pump there, that's going to be able to deal a decent chunk of damage to the Arcanine on the opposing side, and if she has brought any of those physical attackers like Tyranitar and the Excadrill, you know, Will-O-Wisp, if it does hit as well, that's going to be able to start weakening the offensive pressure from Sierra's side.
Yeah, the Will-O-Wisp is definitely a threat that Sierra needs to watch out for, especially now she's brought the Excadrill onto the field, you know, predominantly relying on that physical attack there. But the one thing that you've got to say for Aaron is, if he wants to go down a Trick Room route later on in this game, he's got rid of the the main threat to that mode in the Amoonguss. He's got rid of that, so it kind of gives him that freedom if he goes for that. The problem is, though, he's got that Bronzong in the back asleep. He needs to get it onto the field. Maybe now's a good time to bring it in, integrate it onto the field, and get through those sleep turns so you're able to set that Trick Room up. Not going to be easy, though, because Sierra has preserved that Dynamax ability. You know, she's going to be able to Dynamax something on the field now, and I wouldn't be surprised if we do see maybe the Arcanine go out, Tyranitar come in and puts a lot of pressure onto the field, gets that Sandstream onto the field as well, the Sandstorm up, and that Sand Rush ability for the Excadrill to really take advantage of here.
Well, it's going to be a switch apiece. Aaron brings the Bronzong onto the field and replaces with the Togekiss. And you called it perfectly there, Lee. One of your favourite Pokemon. I know you'll be delighted to see it on the field. Tyranitar is here, paired up next to Excadrill. And these two really are a classic combination. The Sand's going to be able to boost up that speed of the opposing Excadrill. And also the Sand will help boost up the special defense here as well of that Excadrill. Just meaning that it doesn't have to worry so much about any Hydro Pumps coming out from the Rotom into that slot. But as mentioned, the late game Dynamax can be key. And it's going to be here on the Excadrill, potentially applying some really strong pressure with something like a Max Steel Spike into what was the Togekiss, but instead going to go straight for that Max Rockfall, boosted up by the speed of the Sand, straight down into the Rotom. Not going to be enough to pick up a KO, but does do a sizable chunk of damage, enough to actually proc the Berry there on Rotom. Going to have to force it to use its item, its Citrus Berry, and regain some HP. But Will-O-Wisp, it does connect onto that Excadrill. This is going to be really debilitating in the damage that Excadrill can deal out, but it has actually got a sneaky little Lumberry there, meaning that on this next turn it's going to be able to apply a lot more pressure with another one of those Max Rockfalls. What a clutch item there for Sierra.
Yeah, one of those rare occasions for Aaron with the Will-O-Wisp actually connecting with the opposing Pokemon. But unfortunately for him, the Lumberry is obviously there on the Excadrill. A really great item choice for Sierra, if she's going to be able to pile on that pressure again because of the Sandstream boosting the speed. It's going to be able to get another Rockfall off, and it's going to be very close to being able to pick up maybe a knockout onto the Rotom before it is able to act. And the Tyranitar in a great position now. The Bronzong asleep. It's got a sleep turn that it's got to go through. And the Tyranitar can just Rock Slide here if it wants to. Maybe get the additional damage that it needs onto the Rotom to pick the knockup out, or go for a crunch or something like that into the Bronzong and get some big damage onto that side of the field. So I think that's probably one of the better options here, but we are going to see just a Max Guard from the Excadrill.
Yeah, Sierra able to apply a lot of pressure here, but the Rotom actually going for the Will-O-Wisp hit into the Tyranitar. Sierra maybe predicting that it was going to go into that Excadrill and thought Tyranitar might be able to deal with the Rotom for the Excadrill partner there, but it's going to be the Lash Out coming from the Tyranitar into that Rotom, and due to the burn, really not going to be dealing as much damage as Sierra was hoping. That Sleep Turn has been taken now by that Bronzong as well, so this is where things can get that little bit risky. You just don't know when the Pokemon's going to wake up.
Yeah, and Aaron taking a really nice turn there to say, well, the Excadrill might miss the knockout with the Rockfall onto the Rotom. That leaves me the opportunity to go for that Will-O-Wisp again, predicting the Max Guard there and actually targeting down the Tyranitar, the one thing that really does threaten the Bronzong, and giving that full protection from that side of the field.
Well, Excadrill back in action here, going for that Max Rockfall into the Rotom, particularly with the additional damage that the Lash Out did in the previous turn. Going to be a really solid KO, and Sierra doesn't have to worry about any more of those Will-O-Wisps. Tyranitar is going to be able to connect the Rock Slide as well on Bronzong, and even though it's not dealing too much damage, if the Bronzong was to wake up, which it does, it has that flinch chance. But no, Bronzong is going to be able to go for Trick Room. So Aaron really demonstrating the flexibility of his team, went really, super speedy at the beginning with those Max Airstreams and the Bulldoze, and now has got Trick Room on the field when Sierra has the speed advantage prior to Trick Room going off. So really interesting to see Aaron manipulating the speed tiers in this game so far. Yeah,
and like we mentioned earlier, the one Pokemon that would be a huge problem for Aaron in this situation would be the Amoonguss, but the Togekiss did the job earlier on, got rid of that. Now Rhyperior in a phenomenal position where you can utilize that Bulldoze that we saw earlier, potentially with a weakness policy, and just Bulldoze Earthquake, and both Pokemon on Sierra's side of the field. We know there's not a Focus Sash on the Excadrill, so they're going to be both threatened, and with the Arcanine in the back, she's in a really awkward position now. What do? Do you try and get the Arcanine in, get Intimidate support onto it? I don't know if it's really necessary to do that, because it's difficult. If the weakness policy is activated here, if that's what the item is on the Rhyperior, then it's going to be very difficult for Sierra to kind of come back in this game, and that's why it was kind of pivotal for her to keep that Amoonguss for this stage of the game, where you can bring it in and really disrupt the Rhyperior, because otherwise now we are going to just see maybe a clean sweep, especially without the Focus Sash on that Excadrill.
Well, Ezreal just going to leave the field, and the Arcanine is going to be able to come in and apply that Intimidate. So just going to be bringing the attack stat to -1 here. But, you know, having seen the Bronzong go for that Bulldoze earlier on in the game, it is a very strong synergy mode within teams to be able to kind of self-activate a weakness policy. And connecting onto that Rhyperior here, yes, it's speed drops, but it's Trick Room. It's actually going to love that. And we'll be able to get that weakness policy boost as well. So negating some of the damage that the Intimidate did, and obviously still putting the attack stat at a more positive stat. It's going to be a really formidable Pokemon for Sierra to deal with here. But Sierra also has a weakness policy of her very own on that Tyranitar. So that's going to help negate some of the damage that the burn is doing to the attack stat. Bronzong revealing that it is the Levitate variety as well, so it can dodge out of the way of this Earthquake. But it does a huge chunk of damage. That's going to be a double KO there for Aaron.
Yeah, huge turn here for Aaron, and you know, like, he's got that perfect position. The Bronzong woke up at the perfect time to get the Trick Room up. It didn't get the flinch from the Rock Slide from Sierra's side of the field, and unfortunately, this combination, like you've already mentioned, having the ability to self-activate your own item, your own weakness policy, and have that Trick Room mode in effect, you know, it makes it very difficult to have any sort of comeback from these sort of positions, and the Rhyperior are going to be able to make easy work of this extra, and Aaron looks like he's going to be able to lock up game 1 in this local champions match.
Bronzong as well, going to be able to deal a huge chunk of damage, almost actually picking up the KO with that critical hit of Body Press. But Rhyperior is going to be able to take the victory in game 1 for Aaron here by going for a Nulla Earthquake here. And I mean, this is why I love sort of best of 3 situations, because there was so much in that game 1 lead. There were lots of twists and turns. You know, Aaron came out with such a fast mode at the beginning, and then suddenly Sierra set up that sand mode, and everything looked to be in terms of she was applying so much pressure on the field. Then Trick Room goes off and the table completely switches again. So this is what I love about teams that have great synergy between their sort of partner Pokemon, and also have so many different modes, because it allows for flexibility and it allows for an amazing match to watch.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it better myself, Lou. I mean, the big thing here was that Aaron wanted kind of, he came out the gates wanting to really get rid of the Amoonguss, hoping that it was going to come onto the field, and it did. And you can see why, because if you're Sierra, you want the Amoonguss there to prevent a Trick Room going up, or at least start the disruption process. The Arcanine's perfect support for it as well with that Snarl, but the problem is with the Togekiss, with that Super Luck, it kind of negates any, you know, special attack drops, and then when you're able to get rid of the Amoonguss, there's not really anything else that Sierra's got that can kind of compensate against the Rhyperior Bronzong combination, and it just proved too much. But like you say, the momentum flip in that match was crazy, because it was Aaron early on, Sierra doing very well at kind of preserving her side of the field, stalling the Dynamax out, and then it was that sand mode came onto the field, and you thought all the momentum is here with Sierra. The Bronzong was asleep. It did get the I'd say an early wake up. It woke up at the right time for Aaron, didn't it? And then after that, it was the momentum just swung to his side with that Rhyperior, and it was very difficult for Sierra to kind of come back from that position.
And so far as well on Aaron's road to redemption with the Rotom, it hit 2 out of 2 Will-O-Wisps there. So, you know, it's doing its job all right for, you know, game 1. But, you know, we still have the set to play through. And it's going to be interesting to see if Rotom's going to be able to handle the pressure. But it certainly was a pivotal Pokemon there for Aaron, being able to negate the Snarls as well, having that Nasty Plot access. And, you know, Nasty Plot boosts it up by 2 stages as well. So it really can be a formidable Pokemon to come down against if you're unable to kind of lower the boost that it's giving to itself. Having access to Will-O-Wisps as well against such physical attackers does just allow you that flexibility as well to either be an offensive Pokemon or sort of a more helper kind of Pokemon on there as well, going for something like the Will-O-Wisp just to kind of support whatever the partner Pokemon is on the field as well.
Yeah, and I think if you're Sierra going into this one, you might want to look at something like Tyranitar with Amoonguss next to it, because I think with the weakness policy that we already saw in game 1, if you can get that activated on the Tyranitar and then potentially protect it from the Will-O-Wisp, you know, status condition from that Rotom, which Amoonguss can do pretty well with Rage Powder, then you're sitting in a great position to not only get rid of something like Bronzong to prevent that Trick Room going up, but then you're setting yourself up for the late game with maybe Excadrill to come in and take advantage of that Sandstream ability on the Tyranitar, the Sandstorm, and be able to kind of sweep up in the same kind of way that Aaron did in that first game, but obviously without the Trick Room or the Rhyperior.
Yeah, well, let's not wait any longer, Lee. Let's jump into Game 2 and see how our caster trainers are going to be able to adapt going into the rest of this set. I always think it's interesting to see if there's going to be changes in the leads, and it's going to be the Amoonguss once again. I think this is a key Pokemon here for Sierra, but it's going to be paired up with that Excadrill. No changes from Aaron, though. It's going to be the Togekiss and the Bronzong, and this is again when the mind games start to come in. Is he going to go for speed again, or could we see a potential Follow Me Trick Room?
Yeah, that's the problem. I think like the Trick Room threat is so apparent here. You can't not protect with the Amoonguss. You've got to try and go for that Spore into the Bronzong again to kind of shut that mode down. But you've got to be wary about the Togekiss because it does carry things like Heat Wave that could potentially threaten both sides of the field. And again, Aaron going straight away with that Dynamax on his Togekiss.
Yeah, straight away going to be the Togekiss, and I wouldn't be surprised to see another Max Airstream here going straight into that Amoonguss, trying to break the Cobra Berry early. But no, it's going to be the Max Flare going straight down into that Excadrill. Just a huge chunk of damage, and I believe actually manages to pick up the KO there with a critical hit. Brings the Sun onto the field as well, so any of these Max Flares are going to be boosted even more into this next turn, completely ignoring the Amoonguss and removing the physical threat from the field. Bronzong as well, going onto the offensive and goes for that body press just in case it needed to do that additional bit of damage to the Excadrill. Amoonguss, however, is going to be free to go for a Spore, and once again that Bronzong is going to be able to take a sleep. But what a offensive start here from Aaron.
Yeah, he's able to remove one of the big threats from Sierra's side of the field pretty easily with that surprise Max Flare there, which does get the critical hit, pick up the knockout, and as you say, get the Sun up onto the field, so boosting it further the next turn. The nice thing that Sierra's been able to do is get, you know, the Spore off onto the Bronzong once again, going to be able to kind of stop that Trick Room going up for a little while anyway. Still needs to be mindful that the Amoonguss is going to be threatened heavily from an Airstream, but at the same time bringing the Tyranitar onto the field that she's just done, getting rid of the Sun, and with the Cobra Berry there, going to be able to put that Togekiss to sleep right now if she chooses to, and obviously maxing the Tyranitar isn't a bad idea to start getting some damage onto that Bronzong while it's out of action and taking a nap.
Yeah, 100%. And you know, that body press from the Bronzong was actually really critical there from Aaron. If potentially Sierra wanted to switch things up, remove the Amoonguss from threat, bring in that Tyranitar and maybe try and, you know, boost up the speed of that Excadrill, the body press going into that Amoonguss slot would have caught onto the Tyranitar. And we all know Tyranitar does not like taking fighting moves at all with its 4 times of weakness. Going to be a shake-up though here, and it's going to be the Amoonguss leaving the field for Sierra, and the Arcanine is going to join the action, going to throw and Intimidate across the field. But Aaron's Pokemon do not mind that too much at all. The Bronzong was also gone back into its Pokeball, very similar to Game 1, as Rotom is going to be able to join the field, this time without having to take a Snarl. Sierra is going to be going for that Dynamax though, Lee, a little bit earlier than previous, and it's going to be that Tyranitar. This is going to be an interesting Pokemon choice to bring out for that Dynamax. I always like seeing it going for some really powerful Max Rock Falls potentially. Yeah,
and it really does threaten that Togekiss, you know, especially the Togekiss has to be wary, knowing that the weakness policy is on that Tyranitar. You don't want to be activating the weakness policy on the Tyranitar, but removing the sand is a really good first step. And I really love this switch from Sierra as well, you know, bringing the Arcanine onto the field and preserving the Amoonguss for later on in the game, essentially, while also kind of being able to sap up that Max Flare really easily.
Yeah, and the Max Darkness is going to do a huge chunk of damage onto that opposing Rotom. It's going to be able to activate the Berry, so Rotom will be able to regain a little bit of HP, but I think the thing you've got to be critical of and wary of here if you're Aaron is the fact that your special defense has been reduced by 1 stage as well. Any potential sort of special type moves coming out from Sierra's side are going to be dealing that additional bit of damage, but I like the way Aaron was able to overwrite the weather as well.
Yeah, getting rid of the weather, obviously getting rid of that special defensive boost on the Tyranitar as well is really useful, especially if you want to go for Max Starfall this next turn, and then maybe try and get a critical hit. It's very risky though, as we've already mentioned, the weakness policy on there, so it could come back to kind of counteract what Aaron's trying to do. But obviously as well, now with the Will-O-Wisp onto the field, is it going to outspeed the Tyranitar? Rotom probably likely to do that, so does pressure without the redirection on Sierra's side of the field. The Will-O-Wisp does threaten that Tyranitar pretty heavily.
I mean, the Pokemon I'm keeping my eye on, Lee, is that Arcanine. The Sun is up. The opposing side are at minus special defense. If it is potentially a special attacker with something like a flamethrower here, that's going to be able to stack up and deal a huge chunk of damage to Aaron's side of the field. But instead, just going to be that Snarl. So unless there's going to be some critical hits here, it's going to be weakening the Togekiss. But it goes from that Max Airstream, does a huge chunk of damage because Togekiss goes, of course, Lou, I'm going to critical hit. Do not, show me that kind of disrespect. And is able to pick up the KO against that Arcanine. And Sierra is going to be able to lose that Snarl using Pokemon. Rotom does manage to hit a Nulla Will-O-Wisp as well. Able to connect onto that Tyranitar, and it will have to now have its attack stat reduced thanks to that burn. It does go for the Max Rockfall, though, into the Rotom, but it is not going to be enough to pick up the KO. It does, however, bring the Sand for that additional chip damage.
Yeah, the Will-O-Wisp there is critical onto the Tyranitar because it really just means that it's not able to get the knockouts like you see there. The Rotom able to hang on and gets an extra turn for Aaron as well, and maybe gives him the ability to utilize something in the back, keep it for later. He's got an extra switch in now, and Sierra's kind of pinned with just that Tyranitar and the Amoonguss, so it's going to be very difficult. She kind of needs to get that weakness policy activated on the Tyranitar, and then at that point, you kind of overwrite what the burn status is doing, and your attack essentially goes back to neutral then, so you can still hit pretty hard. I think the big thing now is trying to get rid of this Togekiss, but you've got to be wary of the Rhyperior and the Bronzong potentially sitting in the back for Aaron.
Yeah, exactly. It's making sure that you've got the utility to be able to pick up these KOs. And, Amoonguss not known for its sort of offensive pressure, and the burn on that Tyranitar is going to be able to work against Sierra here. But, of course, the sand damage will be enough to pick up the KO on that Rotom if it does decide to stay in on the field. And Aaron no longer has access to the Dynamax here. So, although critical hits could still very much be a thing, at least you're not going to have the additional kind of base power damage that you get from using max moves.
No, and that's a big plus, and I think the Bronzong switch here in is perfect because of everything on the field. You think that's probably the target that you would go down if you are Sierra with a Rockfall into that slot. So the Bronzong going to be able to come in and kind of easily take this.
Yeah, Rotom going for that Will-O-Wisp into the Protect of the Amoonguss as Max Rockfall comes out, and the Bronzong going to be able to take that much better than the Togekiss would have. Togekiss, still relatively healthy there in the back. Aaron now has access to a free switch due to the Rotom being KO'd to the sand. Gives him the opportunity to maybe bring in the Togekiss. Again, it can apply some damage with, obviously, the Fire-type moves there, trying to remove the Amoonguss from play, or could always go for the Flying-type moves as well, and just try and remove the threat of that Sport from the field. And I believe as well that is the end of the Dynamax turns for Sierra, so it's going to be interesting to see how these last couple of turns play out in this game.
Yeah, it's just the offensive pressure that Sierra's missing at the minute from the Tyranitar with that burn. It's such a big thing for it to really get behind, because obviously you want to be hitting for huge damage onto the super effective things in front of you, but now because of that burn, both the Togekiss and the Bronzong are going to be able to just sit on the field and kind of sap things up and really deal with that Amoonguss before something like the Rhyperior potentially comes onto the field to close the game out like it did in Game 1.
And poor Amoonguss taking a critical hit from that Heat Wave his way. It did a huge chunk of damage, and despite the Lash Out being super effective, Bronzong going to be able to take that relatively easily. It's going to just take another turn of sleep, and this is where things can get interesting for Sierra. Amoonguss able to hang on, does manage to go for the Spore onto that Togekiss, which is now going to have to take a little bit of sleep, and I wonder if there is anything that this Tyranitar can do to try and chip away at that Togekiss while it's taking its sleep turns, maybe try and remove it from the field.
Yeah, and there is an option here of maybe trying to activate your own weakness policy on the Tyranitar. If you've got something like Giga Drain on the Amoonguss, it's a safe turn to potentially go for that. It's risky, of course, and the Tyranitar won't be able to utilize that till the next turn, but, doing that might be enough if you go for a Lash Out into the Bronzong here to hopefully have it stay asleep for at least one more turn, and then you can remove it, so preventing that Trick Room going up in the late game.
Despite the burn, the Rock Slide does still do a decent chunk to that opposing Togekiss. The Bronzong, however, wakes up, goes for that Bulldoze. This is going to be able to activate that weakness policy on the Tyranitar on Sierra's side, so this could be what the Tyranitar has been waiting for ever since it got the burn. Of course, not going to be dealing too much damage to the Amoonguss, but unless the Amoonguss is going for something like a Sludge Bomb here, to maybe try and double up, which it is doing into that Togekiss. I was going to say Togekiss will be able to hang around, but no, the double up, Amoonguss able to be able to pick up the KO against it.
Yeah, that's a big play there, getting rid of the Togekiss. It's unfortunate, again, that the Bronzong's woke up when it has, because it's been able to get not only the Trick Room, the Bulldoze, which is probably way more beneficial now for the Rhyperior to come in and just go for that clean Earthquake. The Tyranitar obviously getting its weakness policy activated, but in this position against the Rhyperior that can just click that Earthquake button, it feels, again, very difficult for Sierra to kind of come back from this spot.
Yeah, it certainly is tricky with the damage that the Tyranitar has already taken as well, something like an Earthquake. It's going to be a little touch and go, particularly with the burn chip there as well. And of course, Bulldoze, yes, it does activate the weakness policy, but it will reduce the speed as well, and that's something Tyranitar doesn't want, while Trick Room is not going to be active.
Yeah, and you've got to worry about the body press as well from the Bronzong, because potentially that can and will just be enough if the Earthquake misses the knockout without the weakness policy boost from the Rhyperior. But here we go. We are going to see if this Rhyperior is going to be able to close this one up right now with this big Earthquake. And it is enough. Aaron taking this one, and the Tyranitar and the Amoonguss both falling.
With a critical hit as well, so the Rhyperior ending in style, and both of Sierra's Pokemon will be joining their Pokeballs, and Aaron is able to take the local champion Caster Showdown. Huge congratulations to Aaron. What a match.
Yeah,